there is no marriage.
Yes.
It is void ab initio. And so, but if we look at it from the point of view of the Muslim Ummah,
Okay.
of course, what we do is in conformity with the Quran and the Sharia.
Okay.
For that matter, it is Islamic marriage. But the closest we can describe it, as far as the law is concerned, we may call it customary marriage.
Okay.
Customary marriage. That is part 1 of the Marriages Act. Okay. It may fall within that category.
Okay.
But to actually give it the tag of Muhammadan marriage or Islamic marriage in the eye of the law, under part 2 of the Act, then there must be registration, and the registration must be done within 1 week of the celebration. The officiating
1 week, it becomes impossible.
That is the problem. and these are the challenges. That is, you are right.
Yeah.
And these are the challenges, serious challenges. This is an act that was enacted long ago. I think 1951. Yeah. It is a colonial legislation that has been with us since now. Yeah. It needs significant reform. And the 1 week, I am happy you have raised that challenge. Yes. You see, if you look at the customary marriage, which is under part 1, there is also a procedure for registration.
Okay.
But registration is not is not what I will consider as a condition precedent. Okay. It's not a condition precedent for the validity of the marriage. You understand? Yeah. So the marriage is contracted under customary law. Registration is not a condition precedent for the validity of the marriage. But when it comes to the Muhammadan law, the Muhammadan, I will continue to use the Muhammadan law.
That's what we have.
But because that is what is in the legislation. Registration is the condition precedent for the validity. So if it is not registered, there is no marriage. It is void ab initio. In fact, in one case, the parties had celebrated their marriage, and the registration was done 25 days after the marriage. Okay. When it went to the court declared that the marriage was void. You see, but under the customary law, under the customary, that is part 1 of the Act, which was previously the registration of marriages and divorce law. It is PNDC law 112, but which is now, following the consolidation of the Act, which is now in part 1 of the Act. Registration is a requirement, or not necessarily a requirement, it's allowed. But it is not a condition precedent. And the parties can register at any time that they wish. In fact, previously, there were also such, let me call them, draconian provisions in the law. But it has been amended. You see, under the customary law. Yes. Initially, the requirement was that it must be registered within 3 months. And that one to registration was a condition precedent for validity. In fact, it was an offense for failing to register. You see, but in 1991, the law was amended to allow for registration at any time that the parties please, to register at any time. But when it comes to the Islamic law, the Muhammadan law, that is part 2 of the Act, without registration, there is no marriage.
So what about Muslim who, after all the ceremony, and then says that, okay, let me go and register under the ordinance? Is it permissible? Is it
yes. It's permissible. When we come to look at the legislation, the Ghanaian law regarding marriage, I will say that it is only the Muslims in Ghana who have a law exclusively dedicated for marriage. All other forms, because if you look at the ordinance, which is now part 3 of the Marriages Act, it was previously Cap 127, but now it is part 3 of the Marriages Act, following the consolidation of the legislation. There are 3 authorities before whom the marriage can be contracted. It can be contracted under the registrar certificate, on the authority of the registrar certificate, or the marriage officer's certificate, or the special license. The marriage officers are mostly the pastors of the various churches.
Maybe the imam can fall under the same category.
Under the same category. That is if it is the imam is licensed to do so, because it says minister of religion. So the imam is a minister of religion.
So in this case, how can the imam be licensed, or who qualifies to be licensed?
Yes, it is the Minister for Interior who grants the license. If the Minister for Interior I'm talking of the Muhammadan.
Yeah.
Yes, if the Minister of Interior forms the view that this is a competent person fit to be able to perform the duties of an imam or a priest, that is what the law says, of a Muhammadan priest under the law, then the minister may grant his license for the functions that is prescribed for the Muhammadan priest under the law. Yes. So basically, that is it, the two categories that. But then, I do not want to send the signal that the marriages that we have are void. As I said, if it fails under the Muhammadan Act, the Muhammadan law, that is the ordinance, it is capable of being considered as customary marriage. You see? And so, whereas in the Muslim communities, even in our invitation cards, we will say Islamic marriage, we are invited this. But as far as the law is concerned, it is customary marriage because of the challenges that we have regarding compliance with the provisions of Part 2 of the Marriage Act.
The issue you spoke about earlier with regards to the chief executive who is supposed to, and I'm wondering how possible.
Yes.
Is that what the law says?
Yes, that is it. The chief executive of that is the district chief executives, they are not actually solemnizing the marriage. Solemnization of the marriage is done by the priest, the imams, yes. But he is only a registrar. He is only a registrar. Yes, the district assemblies, they only keep custody of the register. And so the registration is done by the bride's wali and the bridegroom and two witnesses, and also by the imam who actually solemnize, appearing before the district chief executive and completing the register and signing their names in the register. Yes, and so the chief executive is actually keeping custody of the register. You see, but the officiation is actually the law, under the law, the officiating. And in fact, that is the reason why the signature of the imam is also, that is the Muhammadan priest, is also a requirement, because he signs to certify the validity of the marriage in accordance with the Sharia. Because he officiates it and he signs to confirm that this marriage was done in accordance with Muhammadan law. That is it. But the district chief executive is not to confirm the validity of the actual validity is done by the validation is done by the Muhammadan priest. And so that is even the more reason why under the law, in some circumstances where it is difficult to procure the signature of the parties, either because one of them has traveled or someone, the signatures of the groom, the wali of the bride,